Hi, you're listening to the Tech Alliance podcast, or the TAP for short. My name is Marina.
And I'm Andre. And since this is our special season, with us today is our very special co host, Eleanor Thompson. Eleanor shared her knowledge in the last episode and is going to stay with us through the whole season to provide insights and help us get to the bottom of things with our guests.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. Super excited for the rest of this season.
Let me remind you that this season is devoted to one broad topic: how to build a partnership team. A special project to help companies new to the concept of partner development understand the benefits of partner management and the ins and outs of standing up a partnership team. Eleanor, you are the author of the season plan. What are we going to cover today?
We're going to be covering one of the most interesting topics that everyone is looking forward to learning about.
Budget.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to be talking about how to persuade stakeholders to budget the team, what metrics the executives care about, who can help you, and why pitching for a budget is one of the best things you can do for your career growth.
Sounds impressive. Dear listeners, don't forget to write everything down.
Or just come back and give the episode another listen. And we have a great expert guest to talk about the topic. Let me introduce with great pleasure Kelsey Johnson, Head of Marketing at Partnerfleet and the author of How to Pitch Your Partner Program to CXOs and Get Budget, the invaluable guide for any partner manager. Kelsey, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this today.
Kelsey, we're thrilled to have you as our guest today, and I believe that all listeners are pricking up ears to learn more about budgeting. I think that trying to win money for a partnership department is not easy, right?
Certainly is not, and it is something that I'm sure all partnerships people have struggled with and feel frustrated with because sort of a general lack of attention and assumed budget that goes to partnership programs. And so I find, learning how to pitch for this budget is something that's so important for the success of your partner program and your company.
Kelsey, you mentioned something in our prep for the episode which pricked my ears and definitely grabbed my attention. You mentioned that pitching for a budget is one of the best things you could do for your career. And I'm like, is that the thing that's missing? Let me find out more. How is that? What does that even mean?
Yeah. So, when we decided to put this guide together, we really were thinking about it from the perspective of the partnerships person. Obviously, we really believe that this can be successful for the company, but we really care about that person working in partnerships and their career. And there's actually 3 reasons that learning how to pitch and making that pitch for budget can improve your career. The first one is that the difference between great employees and leaders is your ability to influence other leadership. And the main way you influence leadership is with that budget, right? You really cannot kick off your initiatives, kick off your ideas, take big strategic strides without budget to back it up for headcount, software, new initiatives, marketing, etc. So really turning from that great partnerships person into a leader in your company and a leader in partnerships comes down to this one particular skill. But it also helps your day-to-day. So if you think about the times, I think probably everybody who's been certainly in SaaS or in any kind of tech company has been in a company that's been doing really well and has been in a company that's struggling. And it is always more comfortable and better day-to-day if you're in the company that's sort of doing really well, right? Everybody's in a good mood, everybody's vibing, there's more money going around, you're still probably working pretty hard, but your day-to-day life is better. And so your ability to pitch for budget, this is true for departments too, right? Sometimes marketing is getting all of the attention because they've got huge initiatives popping off, or sometimes your company is really sales-led. But if you can actually pitch for that budget and have more of the attention, budget, and direction heading into partnerships, then you get to be in the department that's cruising, that's spending money, that's, seeing results, that's really trying lots of things and finding some of these successful things. And that's a great position to be in just day to day for your own happiness, for your own success. And then the last reason is, like any skill in tech and partnerships and whatever, once you've learned to do it once, you're pretty good at it. Like if you've been able to successfully get budget from a leadership team, first of all, that leadership team, especially if you spend that budget well and you do great things with it, they're going to say yes to you faster and easier the next time. But you can also take that skill into your next job. You can start pitching when you're even just applying for jobs, and that's going to be something that's going to really help you accelerate into those higher up leadership positions and be able to prove, the value of your own work.
That's crazy. I'm sold. I want to be in a department that's cruising. That's like, what's not to like?
Me too, always.
Sounds really inspiring. I saw, Eleanor, you were nodding. I guess you have a couple of comments.
Absolutely. I think, I've worked in many companies before, and pitching for budget is something that, fortunately earlier on in my career, I had leaders to do. But as I grew throughout my career, it became even more important for me to be able to pitch budget myself. So I'm just so grateful that we have this opportunity to educate lots of people on how to do that, because it's definitely a skill that I've carried through my career and now into my business that I think is transferable.
Yeah, all of a sudden one day you wake up too and you're the boss who needs to be pitching for other people, and you've got people working under you that you need to really be enabling, and you're like, oh shoot, nobody taught me how to do this. That's not how I got here. And so this is a skill that you really have to learn, like a lot of other leadership.
Kelsey, it's not a secret that now the economic situation is quite challenging. So how can you make your executives want to give partnership budget in a struggling economy? I think that, hey, can you give us a little money is not enough, and we need something, well, pretty solid.
Yeah, you need to be asking for the amount of money that you actually need to have success with whatever you're going to do with it, which means a big ask, which means a big project, and we've already gotten to talk about, oh yeah, it's great. I love it. Everybody's on board. Let's pitch for budget. But then when it comes down to it, this is something that's extremely hard to do. And it requires shifting your mindset to the position where your executives are thinking. And I urge everybody to not make any assumptions there. You can talk to an executive after work or have a one-on-one with them and not really actually have any idea what they're talking about in their meetings. And so, so the economy is not doing great in 2024, especially for, B2B SaaS and certainly some other things as well. What it comes down to in order to actually create that influence is the stats, right? You need to have the data, as much data as possible in the way that your executives actually care about it in order to influence them. Now, something that's kind of cool from pitching specifically for partnerships is that partnerships can actually be an idea that's really good in a down economy. So we took a look at this B2B sales benchmark report by Pavilion this year. And it was, the data that came out of it said that 10% of pipeline was driven by partner referrals, but over 30% of revenue came out of that 10% of pipeline. And so partnerships is actually, if done right and if invested in properly, is a really extremely efficient way to grow revenue. And that's what your leadership is looking for in a down economy, right? Like, what are the cheap ways that we can be making money instead of just pumping money into ads and then having, revenue come out of it, or having pipeline come out of it, or pumping money into outbound. Partnerships is scalable. Now, it takes more work on the front end, and unfortunately for people in partnerships, it requires a lot of work to track and associate that revenue back to those partnerships, especially if it's not just direct referrals, but some of these other sources. But if you do that work, I think what you'll find, and what we certainly found, is that the opportunity is there to spend less and get more out of it. And so, this is really like a good time for you almost to start pitching this idea and start getting it in the heads of your leadership. I also think that, we all love the idea of, all right, putting together our deck, getting our pitch together, getting in front of all of our executives, here's the numbers, here's the charts, here's the graphs, here's the pain points, et cetera. Here's how we're going to solve everything. And then they're like, yep, here you go, cut you a check, whatever. But there's a lot of pitching for budget that comes down to getting no's initially And actually, when then they're budgeting for 2025 or 2026, you've gotten into their heads and they've started to think about, okay, we don't necessarily have to follow this traditional path that we've already been down forever that's not working for us right now. And so this is a really good time to sort of seed that. And then even if you get that no, revisit it in 6 months, see if there's space for, once there is budget or if there's new investment or anything like that, then this can be the next channel that it's coming up on. And so the one thing I make sure that to encourage everybody to do is you have to do your research. And what I would love to tell you exactly what your executives care about, but every single company is different. Every single person at the top is different. They're all sort of paying attention to different things, and they've got different ideas and personalities and successes in their past that got them to where they are. And so we encourage to try to listen to recent earning calls if you can get your hands on them, analyze investor discussions, talk to finance and strategy departments, see what the actual finances of your company look like. Because we are all sort of in 2025 or 2024. I'm already thinking next year. 2024 is a down economy, but that might not be true for your company. That might just be a fear tactic, and your company might be just doing great. I mean, I know certainly in like HR, companies are really doing well right now. And there's lots of other types of companies that really aren't struggling. They just are afraid of starting to struggle because a lot of the other ones are. Um, Seek out those strategic plans, annual reports, and internal memos, and then try to distinguish between the immediate goals for your company, which are like cash flow, new markets, whatever, and the long-term ambitions. Are they looking to acquire? Are they looking to expand? Are they looking to get acquired? Or what are some of the sort of big picture goals that your executive leadership is looking at that you haven't thought about because you're in the day-to-day?
I really resonate with that because I've spoken before about, the difference between getting all of the numbers that are great for people to hear and those metrics that are really important. And then for some teams, customer stories might be really important, like how working with a partner enhanced a customer's experience. And you can't always put numbers against that. So I think understanding what's important to each department is really, really crucial to getting their attention. You mentioned a few different numbers around, pipeline and revenue. And I know you can't say to every single person what is going to be important to their company, but what are some of the other things that people can think about? Like the thing that comes to mind for me is, like close rate or cost of acquisition. Like, have you got, a list of potential metrics that people should consider tracking within their organizations?
Yeah, so we we put together in the guide, which you can certainly take a look at. There's metrics that sort of people care about department to department. And I can run through some of those, just depending on the executive that you're talking about. And then there's some sort of like kind of bigger picture, like what are the percentages, if I'm looking at this B2B benchmark report and it's saying on average, right, that there's, however many, like 10% from referrals, but then it's like 30% from outbound and, 25% from inbound. That's not your company. That's a benchmark. That's a, analysis report. So finding out what that actual percentage of pipeline coming into your company is. This is a little bit harder with revenue because, is it first touch source of revenue? Is there any way that you can figure out the main ways that your partnerships program is influencing revenue? And be bold here. Everybody else is being bold. Your CMO is being bold about the way that marketing is influencing revenue. Sales is obviously pretty much like the closest to actual revenue because they, touch it for almost the entire time. But go in there and see if you can figure out like different ways for you to find the way that partnerships is influencing pipeline and particularly revenue. Some of the other metrics that we looked at from sort of the high level, what your different departments are looking for is, your CFO is looking for revenue growth rate profit margins, cash flow, like how much cash is actually do you actually have coming in and how much are you spending? That's something that not a lot of us think about when we're not up at the top talking to the CFO, right? How much is going out? How much is the expenditure for, these different channels? Your CRO is looking for deals sourced and assisted by partnerships, improved sales win rates, right? Is if there's a partnership involved in some way, is that a better win rate than if it's just cold? And is that also influencing the deal size, right? Do they spend more if they're brought in by or influenced by partnerships in some sort of a way? Your CMO is really going to care about co-marketing, the ways that you can assist top of funnel demand gen. And you guys all heard at the top of the podcast, I'm actually from marketing, right? Have worked in small enough teams where I've worked directly with partnerships for most of my career. And it's because partnerships actually drives a lot of those demand gen channels, and they can really be helpful for them. So a lot of times partnerships is really influential to marketing. And so if you are going and you're asking for this budget and your CMO is kind of scared, like, well, is that budget coming from my budget into partnerships? Really, taking a look at those, what are the ways that partnerships can actually and have actually influenced that top of funnel demand gen, and can we align that with marketing? Um, and then your CEO is looking at the biggest picture, right? Like, how can we grow revenue? How can we maintain or grow profitability or get to profitability? What's our market share, across the market? And then they're also looking at these kind of bigger picture, like strategic goals. And how can you align, what your plan is for this with the strategic alignment and the sort of big picture 5-10 year plan that your CEO is thinking about? Honestly, if you download our guide, there's even more metrics. There's so many. Collect as many as you can. See what you can put together. Don't spend 3 months collecting metrics. See if you can, make friends with your, analysis teams, have them draw some numbers for you, but get whatever you can, make the best story that you can, and make sure in this process, if your idea that you had on how to spend this money is actually going to be useful, right? As you're putting together these numbers, you might realign the way that you want to actually use this budget that you're getting for partnerships. And so have it sort of be this little bit of a process. But, when we sat down to write this guide, we were like, okay, try to do it in like 2 weeks to a month, to pull these metrics together and then just move on, or else you could live in metrics forever.
Yeah, that was exactly what I wanted to say, that in the guide, a manager can find a very nice and concise kind of to-do list with the checkboxes. And it is very clear what you have to complete in order to prepare the pitch. However, I have a question of the plan. Since I'm not very experienced in pitching for budget for building a new department, the question is that what exactly are we going to spend money on? Except for the salaries. What should we take into account? Stupid question, I know. Still, I'm curious.
No, that's not a stupid question at all. And I'm going to sort of align that back to, this thought of a traditional business model versus an ecosystem business model. This is something that I feel like maybe in partnerships we're talking a lot about. I don't think I've talked to anybody else in any other role who thinks about this stuff that much. At least they don't think about it like an ecosystem business model. And so while you're excited about that potentially in partnerships, you really need to have a more direct idea of what it is that you're going to do, what you're going to spend the money on, what your plan is. And so what we did is we put together this sort of rubric, these checklists, and there's different ways that you can take a look at the way that your company's business model works now and find opportunities to bring partnerships into it and make it more successful, more efficient, um, drive up revenue or innovation or things like that. And so, the way that we thought about it is, first of all, how do you create demand, right? Is it outreach? Is it paid ads? Is it content, events? can you put together all of the sort of channels for how you're, creating demand, doing demand gen at your company? And then how do you sell? Is it, self-service? Is it transactional? Is it sales led? Do you have resellers? Do you work a lot within co-selling with, some of your partners or agencies or something like that? And then also thinking about how do you innovate, right? We at Partnerfleet, because we work with partnerships teams who are largely tech partnerships teams, right? Building out those integrations, bringing developers in to build apps. We think a lot about, is your entire staff building all of the use cases for all of your customers? Or are you, being a best in class product who integrates with the companies that your customers need them to integrate with, right? Everybody cares about having everything integrated. Nobody at all wants to be dragging data manually from platform to platform. Are you integrated with all of those other places? But then is there an opportunity for you to actually build APIs and allow some of these smaller developers to create apps that solve for use cases that aren't worth your core product's time, and sort of bring them into the process and have, we call it like crowdsourced innovation. And that's actually partnerships too, And so if your company is very strong on the product side and you're looking to grow in that way, are there opportunities to pull partnerships in there? And then the last one that we think about a lot is how are you providing services, right? Do you have do you have a huge service team that you're providing services to in-house? Is there a base level service that you can provide, but there are additional services that you really need to bring partners in to help? Like if you've got an automation tool, right? There's basic levels of your support team can help solve problems or bugs or anything that's coming up. But then that's this bigger picture of like, what is our automation strategy? What is, how can I put together this entire system? Do I need somebody to help me with the operational side of that? And is that something that you can bring partners in on? And then what do these partners look like? Are they agencies? Can your agencies that are helping to provide support also become resellers? Um, can they become just partner referrals, referral partners? And there's probably at most of the companies, for anybody listening to this, elements of all of this stuff already going on. And by diving into this data and taking a look at some of these numbers, you probably have a really good opportunity to find one or two different ways to expand what's already working. And the only reason it hasn't been expanded yet is nobody's taken a look at like, oh, look, there's so much demand coming in from these partner referrals. Can we incentivize them? Can we let's host an event, a virtual event to get them all excited about it? Is there some way that we can build out these referrals or just create a bigger, more robust program based on the fact that we hadn't previously looked at these numbers yet, how we're solving for things internally versus how we could be using or are using partners to solve for some of these things in our company. And then that's where the really good ideas come into play, right? Finding those like, oh my gosh, we only have 10% of referral pipeline, but it's driving 30% of revenue. Okay, let's ramp that referral pipeline. Let's make that a huge channel for us.
Wow, we've covered a lot and in a ton of detail. I have as we're getting towards the end of the episode, I have a self-interested question. None of this sounds easy. It looks like you need to get support from a lot of people and you need to ask a lot of people for data and insights before you can do this successfully. Who are your real friends? Who does the partner manager need to rely on to prepare the speech really? What are your like top 3, top 5?
Well, first of all, the good news is that partnerships people are by nature good at making friends because that's their kind of their whole job. So hopefully you've you're a well-liked person already in your company. There's sort of two main categories of people that we think that you need to have on board. And this is how I've pitched for budget in the past and how I've done it successfully. And the first one is a cross-functional team of leadership from other departments. So you have to pull your sales leader, your product leader, your support leader, your marketing leader, and then anybody else in that's specific to your company at your level, or even potentially a little bit above your level, and have a conversation with them very, very early on. Be kind, be open to their feedback, be understanding when they're hesitant to jump on board, and really, we call it a tiger team, but really leverage these other leaders who, they potentially have already done this before. And so they might have the knowledge, but they will also have your back if they've gotten to have a say early on and really felt like they get to influence this and even get to put their name onto it to a certain degree. Down the line, it's not going to cause any divides in your company or any, ill will or any discomfort really there. And then the other thing to keep in mind is, if at all possible, get an executive sponsor for this, which means somebody who's going to be in that meeting that you're doing the pitch on. Um, in my experience, if you have a personal relationship with somebody, that's fantastic. Like if you just know somebody already, you had, you like to meet up with them for coffee. Obviously, that's a little bit less common now that most of us are remote, but you just have like a friend who's willing to sort of listen to you before you are really polished on this yet and can tell you, no, 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 the CEO doesn't care about any of that stuff. What the CEO cares about is this, or this is actually what we've been talking about in these meetings. And I feel like this is a place that you can align your goals with that or your pitch with that. But if you don't have a friend in an executive team, which is certainly going to be true if you work in a particularly big company, what you should find is the person who is sort of most friendly to either new ideas or partnerships in general. So see if you can find somebody who likes to post on LinkedIn about, like disruption or, you know, new ideas, or is loving to share, their whatever newsletter that they get with everybody, like, oh, here's the newest thing. These early adopter people who are fantastic to have on your team, especially if they're in an executive team. And there's almost always at least one of these guys, because they really help push the company forward and they get everybody stoked. So having the leadership guys, across across the different departments, sales, marketing, etc., early, and then also trying to find that executive sponsor who can really help you. You don't need to pull them in quite as early, but they certainly need to be a part of polishing your pitch before you make it.
I really like the idea to find an early adopter through LinkedIn posting habits.
Those people are kind of loud, aren't they? But they're super great when you're looking to kind of make this change, make this pitch for something that might potentially be a little bit scary to other people.
Well, I absolutely loved our chat today. I've honestly learned a tremendous amount. Eleanor, you got any final thoughts or questions for Kelsey?
Yeah, I've also loved this. So thank you so much. I just want to add, for people that are maybe earlier in their careers, like I really, really encourage you to speak to your senior leadership about, if you can be involved in the budget process in any kind of way. And for leaders, if you can involve your team in any way. I was very fortunate to have a leader, probably in the kind of middle of the last 10 years of my career to involve me in part of the budget process, which really enabled me to do that later on in my career myself. So yeah, if you're early on, ask to be involved. And if you're a leader, involve your team where possible, because it really, really helps with that learning and development and career growth.
Yeah, I also want to mention this is really scary. This is an uncomfortable thing to do. Some people I think very few of us out there are comfortable asking for money. And even though this is budget, this is, money to help your company grow, it still sort of feels like you're going in with your hands out asking for money. You got to power through it. it's going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to be so happy if you did.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, it's going to be so uncomfortable only maybe the first few times, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get with it. So it's a good skill. It's a good muscle to exercise.
Kelsey, it was a great talk. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Again, I work for Partner Fleet. Partner Fleet is a company that helps you build an app marketplace, which is something that a lot of people are doing either, through Webflow or WordPress, or trying to do in-house themselves. And we really offer like a good in-between option for there so that you can get it up and running quickly, but there's a lot of back-end functionality to it. And we also wrote the executive pitch guide for partnerships. So go head over to partnerfleet.com and you can download that guide and take a look at our product.
There will be links in the description for sure. Today's episode absolutely blew my mind. I think one of the things that Marina and I kept saying is that one of the main reasons that we post factum discovered about the joys of having a podcast is that this is going to be the best learning experience you can possibly have in life. So kids, start a podcast, if for no other reason than this. And just to quickly summarize, first of all, I do recommend that you maybe give this episode another listen. Maybe, double the speed, but still, there was a lot of ground covered. By way of a quick summary, first of all, the obstacle is the way. If you feel that right now you're in a tough environment, this is actually the best time to be pitching. So go for it, because pitching is great for your career. You're going to build a really important muscle. Tell the right stories with the right numbers. Make friends with people inside your company who will help you create them. But also don't bury yourself in metrics forever. Act. Stalk early adopters inside your company on LinkedIn. I mean, stalk in the nicest possible sense of the word. Just become friends with them. They'll be very helpful. And first and foremost, the thing that I loved Kelsey saying the most was be bold. This is your job, but also this is your career. This is your life. This is you pushing the envelope and expanding borders for everybody. So, don't hesitate. With that, if you want to learn more about pitching a budget, as Kelsey said, have a look at the guide, How to Pitch Your Partner Program to CXOs and Get Budget, by Kelsey Johnson and Cody Sankel, link in the description. And this is it from us for today.
Thank you so much. This has been an incredible episode. The next one will be on partner operations, which we're very excited for, and we will see you all soon.
This concludes this episode of the special project by the Tech Alliance podcast, featuring Andre, Marina, Eleanor, and Kelsey.
Be sure to subscribe, like, and share this episode, especially if you know anyone who is going out or would benefit from building a partnerships team. You can find the links in the description.
Catch you next time on the tap.